Hello everyone, please welcome to this Lactalis Ingredients webinar about the interest of a complementary care between fast and slow protein in elderly. I'm Mathilde Gerville. I'm a nutrition scientist working at the nutrition department of Lactalis Research and Development. And before getting to the heart of the matter, just a quick word about Lactalis Ingredients. We are a global producer of whey and milk ingredients, and our headquarters is located in the west of France. With our 1,540 employees and our 18 production sites, we are able to be active in more than 100 countries. And the agenda of the presentation will be the following. First, we will talk about healthy aging. Then we will describe the nutritional strategy to gain or maintain mobility. And finally, we will present you our ingredient solution to tackle these issues. Aging, yes, but it's inevitable, but healthy aging is what really matters. People worldwide are living longer. Today, for the first time in history, most people can expect to live into their 60s and beyond. In 2015, 900 million of world's population was aged 60 and older. And by 2050, it's expected to a total of 2 billion. While these shifts in the distribution of population towards older age, starting in high-income countries, it is now low and middle-income countries that are experiencing the greatest change. In parallel to this increased proportion of older people, a constant increased life expectancy is also seen worldwide that reach more than 80 years old in Japan. However, with this increased life expectancy, the period without health disabilities remains stable. Indeed, even if aging is inevitable, every person has its own aging trajectory depending on each life event. This is what shows the graph here. In the y-axis, it represents the functional reserve. At the bottom, highly dependent, from bed immobilized, to fully independent at the top. The x-axis is the age. And during normal aging, the functional reserve declines gradually with age, as described in the curve number 1. But some other life events can influence the curve, such as chronic disease that decreases slowly the functional abilities, which is the curve number 2. Acute disease, the curve number 3, can also impact the curve. People might be immobilized and highly dependent for a moment and then recover, but only partially their capacities. So to conclude, each life event might affect aging trajectories. Therefore, aging doesn't really depend on the age, but rather of mental and physical capacities. Each person has a different phenotype, as described in the picture here, highly mobile, in nursing home with difficulty to walk or to eat. But biologically, what happened during aging and what caused this decline in physical and mental capacities? At the biological level, aging results from the impact of the accumulation of a wide variety of molecular and cellular damages over time. This leads to a gradual decrease in many organs' function associated with a growing risk of disease. Common conditions in older age include hearing and vision loss, back and neck pain and osteoarthritis, increased brain lesion that might lead to memory loss, but also bone mass is decreasing as well as muscle mass, resulting to a loss of strength, so-called sarcopenia. And furthermore, as people age, they are more likely to experience several of these conditions at the same time. Elderly really feels this biological change, as described in the survey conducted in France in 2016, showing that more than 60% of elderly declares having bone and articulation affection, 40% having cardiovascular disease, 30% feel tiredness and exhaustion, as well as sleep problem and intestinal discomfort. And because of all these biological changes, it has a real impact on daily life. And 1 of 3 senior aged 65 and more declares to have at least one physical limitation during daily activity. So the ultimate goal is to postpone as much as possible the appearance of these physical limitations. And as shown in the graph here, the objective is to never, or the later of possible, the disability thresholds, and in order to have the best quality of life. So once more, aging, yes, but healthy aging is what really matters. The WHO, the World Health Organization, has defined the healthy aging by the process of developing and maintaining the functional ability that enables well-being in older age. The functionality is about having the capacity that enables all people to be and to do what they have reason to value. This includes a person's ability to meet their basic needs, to learn, grow, and make decisions, to build and maintain relationships, and to contribute to the society. And more importantly for us today, to be mobile. And the mobility, it will be what we will focus on now. First, because I say it's an important feature of healthy aging, but also because environmental changes can impact it highly. And to gain or maintain mobility, the primary objective is to fight the loss of muscle mass that naturally occurs during aging. As shown in the graph here, the loss of muscle mass starts at 25 years old, with a progressive decline. At 40 years old, we already lost 8%, and then at 60 years old, 15%. So the goal here is to lower the curve. And to do that, the winning combination is the association of physical activity and nutrition. This will help to lower the loss of muscle mass and to maintain or recover muscle mass and strength and then mobility. All over the world, guidelines on physical activity for elderly are published, and these activities have to be adapted to the physical capacities of each one. And here an example of the guidelines in UK, but you can find those in France or by the WHO or also in Australia. Now that we talk about physical activity, let's talk about the nutritional strategy associated. As described earlier, the goal is to reduce the age-related muscle mass, and this will be by increasing the synthesis of muscle protein. To do this, the key nutrients is the protein quality, the protein distribution, and the protein quality. Let's start with the protein quantity. We frequently hear our old one says, I don't need to eat that much because I exercise less, or a soup and a piece of cheese is enough for dinner. Or again, I'm less hungry, so I need less food. But in the elderly, craving are opposed to the physiological needs. Indeed, the needs in protein increase with age. At 50 years old, with an active lifestyle, the protein needs are similar to a young adult, about 0.8 gram per kilogram per day, which represent around 60 grams per day for a 70 kilogram person. At 65 years old, the protein needs increase due to the age-related changes in protein metabolism and reach 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram per day. That represents about 80 grams of protein per day. And at 80 years old, with a frailty syndrome, the protein is even more important, about 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram per day. That represents a total of 100 grams of protein per day. Associated with this increased need, the protein intake often decreases with age. And here's some data from a French survey. It represents the protein intake in grams per day in men and women from people aged from 18 to 44 years old in dark blue, for 45 to 64 years old in medium blue, and 65 to 79 years old in light blue. And the golden bar here represents the recommended dietary intake. So for the young adult, the intake is above the recommendation for men and in line for women. For the 45 to 64 years old people, in men, the protein intake is the recommendation, and for women, the recommendation is higher than the intake. And finally, for people aged 65 years old and more, the whole population has an intake below the recommendation. Having an adequate protein consumption is essential for muscle protein function and physical capacity, but the timing of protein intake is also of importance to best stimulate the muscle protein synthesis and maintain muscle mass in adults. More and more, scientists talk about a threshold of 0.4 gram per kilogram per meal to have a sufficient muscle protein synthesis in elderly that correspond to around 30 grams of protein per meal. In most cases, the protein distribution through the day is not optimal as it doesn't reach the threshold of 30 grams per protein per meal. With an Occidental breakfast, it brings about 10 grams of protein per meal. At lunch, a little bit more, 20 grams of protein, and a sufficient intake in dinner with 60 grams of protein. This distribution example is relevant for some countries, but as you imagine, it's highly dependent on the food culture of each region around the world. But what is important, whatever the country and the food culture, is that protein intake has to be at least 25 to 30 grams per protein per meal, of protein per meal. So having an adequate protein consumption during each meal is important, but consumption protein with high quality is also of importance. And all protein are not created equal. Thanks to their particular composition, whey protein exerts anabolic properties, which mean that they are capable of stimulating the muscle protein synthesis. And why of that? First, because whey protein contain a high leucine content, and we know that leucine, an amino acid, is the signal to drive muscle protein synthesis. And whey protein are the richest protein in leucine. Secondly, whey protein exhibit a faster digestion. And here is some data from a pioneer study conducted by Boiry and collaborator in 1997, showing the appearance of amino acid in the blood after the ingestion of either whey protein or casein. And as you've seen in the graph, the fast protein, the whey protein, exhibit a peak of amino acid after ingestion in red here, whereas the slow casein exerts a lower peak in green here. In fact, the casein flocculates in the stomach, leading to a slower digestion. And because whey protein is faster digested, the high concentration of leucine reaching the muscle gives the signal to increase the muscle protein synthesis. Finally, we also know that dairy protein and whey protein in particular are more efficiently digested, with more than 80% of the amino acid digested for animal-based protein and more in particular for whey protein. Whereas for plant-based protein, only 45 to 80% of amino acid are digested. Thanks to all these characteristics, whey protein is now recognized to be the protein that supports muscle protein synthesis. And here a study that illustrates this effect. It was a study performed in old men that consume either whey protein or soy protein isolate at rest or after exercise. And as you can see in the graph, the consumption after exercise of 20 grams of protein increased significantly the muscle protein synthesis at the difference of soy protein isolate. So whey protein, by consuming whey protein, you will increase your muscle protein synthesis and you will gain in mobility. So whey protein is the anabolic protein, meaning it stimulates protein synthesis. But casein, by its slow digestion, has also an interest. The consumption of casein decreases catabolism, meaning the mechanism by which the protein from muscle are degraded. During fasting period, your body will need protein to maintain its vital function. Therefore, because you are not providing amino acid and protein from food, your body will use the one from your muscle, and it's called protein catabolism. By its slow digestion, casein are able to provide amino acids, which are the small building blocks of the protein, for a long time, and then are able to decrease protein catabolism. Your body don't need to take protein from your muscle because the slow digestion of protein will provide you the needed amino acid. That's why we advise to consume casein before sleep, for example, to reduce protein catabolism during the night. And this will also help to maintain muscle mass and gain mobility. So, NU, in your formulation, when choosing a protein, do you differentiate between slow and fast protein? So, NU, for your formulation, when choosing a protein, do you differentiate between slow and fast protein? As we just saw, fast protein is essential for stimulating protein synthesis, but casein have also interest on decreasing protein catabolism. So because of their complementarity action, each protein might be beneficial in a particular moment of the day. During breakfast, we know that in most people, they don't eat enough protein to reach the anabolic threshold and to induce muscle protein synthesis. Therefore, it can be interesting to add 10 grams of casein or whey protein in breakfast to reach this threshold. Physical activity in combination with whey protein consumption is the perfect association to increase muscle protein synthesis. And finally, casein just before sleep will help to decrease muscle protein catabolism that occurs during the night. So altogether, each consumption moment will contribute to gain muscle function and to restore or maintain mobility. So does this approach seem interesting to you? Does yes or no? Does this approach seem interesting to you? Yes or no? Now, in lactase ingredient, what ingredient could we propose to tackle these issues? Lactase ingredients offers pronative. This protein is natural and pure. It's extracted directly from milk without added ingredient or chemical. Minimally processed through alcohol filtration method, the native form of the protein is preserved. The full nutritional quality as well. We were pioneer in perfecting a technique that allows the gentle extraction of a new whey protein, pronative. And lactase ingredients continue to explore the field of native whey and launched in pronative native micellar casein. Now let's go into more detail into pronative native whey protein. Pronative native whey is a fast protein with superior nutritional qualities compared to a standard whey protein. Pronative is close to its original form in milk, preserving its excellent biological value and amino acid profile. It offers a high content in branched-chain amino acid, including leucine, with a 15% higher leucine content compared to a standard whey. It enables a high protein enrichment without compromising taste and flavor. And moreover, pronative, intended for senior and clinical application, it's strictly monitored to meet high microbiological quality and mineral profile requirement of this market. Scientific studies have shown that native whey protein, pronative, guarantees the necessary amount of leucine to stimulate muscle mass synthesis and improve muscle function, with benefits such as better resistance to fatigue and locomotor activity. This protein is available halal and kosher certification and with a French origin. And lactase ingredient just launches this new pronative native micellar casein. As a slow protein, it is ideal for the formulation of food with low viscosity, high protein density, and with a neutral taste. This protein contains 87% of protein and is also rich in branched-chain amino acids. It is also an excellent source of calcium, and our native micellar casein is heat stable with low viscosity and a neutral taste, and with also an excellent microbiological quality. This protein is available with halal and kosher certification and with a French origin as well. If you would like to have more information, please visit our website to the address noted just here. And also, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I will be very happy to answer any question you have on this presentation and our product. So I see here on the chatbot that there is one interesting question of the definition of a native. So how can we define the term native and native protein? So Lactalis ingredient consider a protein native when there has been no modification of its original form and composition found in the milk. And thus we apply the following internal definition to define which protein can be classified as native. And for us, a native protein is a finished protein derived from milk that was minimally processed without modifying the original structure of any of the material. Pronative, native whey, and native micellar casein are indeed minimally processed. It is produced directly from milk using a gentle, non-deteriorating process based on membrane separation technology only. And no additive or chemical are used to extract our native protein. I hope it answered your question. So I see an interesting question in the chat box. In what kind of a finished product can your native protein be used? So our pronative native whey can be used in clear beverage or high protein gel for an easy consumption after physical activity, for example. It can also be used in high protein powder to enrich food. And for the pronative native micellar casein, the micellar casein content of 90% compared to 80% for a conventional milk give this protein interesting functional properties for the formulation of food with low viscosity, high protein density, or neutral taste, and such as high protein beverage, for example. For another question, can we claim source of calcium with your micellar casein ingredient? So yes, you can claim source of calcium. 20 grams of pronative native micellar casein contain 800 milligrams of calcium, which correspond to almost the recommended dietary reference for an adult. So yes, you can claim it a source of calcium. And another question in the chat box, do you have low lactose references? So as for now, low lactose references are available for pronative native whey protein. So this is the end of the Q&A session. Thank you everyone for listening, and please feel free to ask us any other question in the address at the last slide of my presentation, and we will answer to your question individually. So thank you everyone, and have a nice day.